One of the things that consistently stands out amongst our great leaders and people who are living at best in the world in their field of expertise is their ability to conquer their fears. Don't get me wrong, these people feel fear just like the rest of us. The difference is that they're able to feel it, to acknowledge it, to recognise it, and to move through it. They move through it because they know that on the other side of fear is their destiny. And let's face it, the world wouldn't have got where it is today without people being able to conquer their fears. Take Christopher Columbus, for example. At the time of Columbus, most sailors wouldn't venture further into the ocean than to lose sight of land. They travelled parallel to the coast. And why did they do this? Well, it was because they feared the unknown. And Columbus had other ideas. He decided to travel at 90 degrees basically to the land and see what was out there. And the rest's history. Let me get slightly technical with you for a minute so that you can understand what's going on with fear. You know that you've got a conscious mind and an unconscious mind. You know that, don't you? The conscious mind is everything that you're conscious of, and the unconscious mind is everything else. Your unconscious mind takes care of your breathing, your healing, and basic things like that. Things that you don't consciously have to think about. Okay, now, the theory goes that the brain's made up of 3 distinct parts that have built up as we've evolved. The original part of the brain is the reptilian brain. It's reptilian because it's thought that this part of the brain was what we'd inherited from prehistoric reptiles. Bear in mind that the world of the reptile is pretty basic and it's ruled by the need to survive, fight or flight. Then we've got the limbic brain. This is the domain of your emotions, and it was originally associated with feeding, reproduction, and parental responsibilities. And these 2 parts of the brain make up the unconscious mind. We then have the neocortex. This part's unique to mammals, and this is the thinking part of our brain where we plan, where we construct ideas, and where we make logical decisions. The neocortex is the conscious mind. Think of it like this. You know what a golf club looks like, don't you? A golf driver with a big head. Now, think of that as the reptilian brain. And then think of the limbic brain as a sock that you just put over the head of the driver so it fits really snugly. And then, finally, put a bicycle helmet on the top of the driver head, and this is the neocortex. And this is in effect what it looks like. Where does fear fit into this? Well, fear's a fight or flight response, isn't it? It comes directly from the unconscious reptilian brain. The reptilian brain's programmed to help us to survive in a prehistoric world. And so we're programmed to fear anything that might be associated with a threat for survival. And that's great, but the problem is that this is deeply unconscious within us. And the unconscious mind works with symbols and patterns. The unconscious mind tries to make sense of our world by associating current and perceived future events to past events using symbols. So, where it thinks that it recognises a threat to survival, the response is fear and therefore fight or flight. Now, think about Christopher Columbus setting off into the unknown, into the wide ocean, and his reptilian brain must have been screaming, "Stop!" But he was able to overcome this. Say you were offered a promotion at work and it meant taking on extra responsibility, unfamiliarity. what do you think is the response of your reptilian brain? What about being faced with the prospect of redundancy? The response is fear, isn't it? Some people are able to overcome this fear. Think about mountain climbers, for example. Mountaineers climbing a north face in the Himalayas. They simply wouldn't be able to continue unless they were able to recognise this reptilian brain fear response, recognise it and overcome it with neocortex logical thinking. Now, obviously, fight or flight, your fight or flight response is useful in certain situations. So what I'm saying is, recognise when you're feeling unwarranted fear. Recognise it as the reptilian brain, or let's call it your saboteur. Recognise it, thank it for its contribution, and move on through it. This is the way to overcome your fear of failure, your fear of success, your fear of the unknown, your fear of loss, of not being good enough. This is the way to lead a bigger life and achieve your potential.